All right, so now that I've done a high-level introduction with the whiteboard, let's dive into the code. And I'm going to go with no chat today, just a full screen view, and let me close some of this down so that it makes a little more sense to everybody. So again, I told you I put this sample CDP file in the templates. Now, this is to simulate the sandbox doesn't have any CDP neighbors, or I would do it live in the sandbox. So what I've done is used the parse show CDP neighbor detail against 5 or 6 different devices, and I've dummied them out so they're just dummy devices in here. But we have our core, which is index 1 and 2, two connections to an upstream core, which is a router switch IGMP capability or a platform. There's a couple of different things we could key on. I'm going to key on the capabilities, and that'll become important in a second. I have just a switch. This is not a router, right? So this is our northbound device, the router, and this would be an east-west device because it's a switch, IGMP, in terms of where we're going to place it. I just called this workbench switch and then developer switch, just to give us a couple different kinds, or two different east-west devices, and then some southbound devices, which are host phone to port MAC relay, this 8851 type of device, and some dummy out, device ID. Those aren't real. And I've just given them all just, different interfaces, so they're all unique. And then at the bottom, I have the capability of a router transbridge for the wireless access points. Now, I see I'm going to need to, well, no, never mind. So this is the JSON file that I'm providing with 15 different CDP neighbors. In theory, this will work with a live CDP, provided you have these types of devices, right? I would happily build in every type of device, and there are some that I haven't included. But just to get going, let's start with a router, 2 switches, a handful of phones, and a handful of access points. Okay, great. So, John, what are we going to do with this? Well, I'd like to make this a little bit more Blender friendly, and I'm also going to, and I haven't completed this yet. I have it in a Docker container. I have it all ready to go and working. What I'm building on now is the different device types. So what you'll see in my Python here, and it's very light Python, datetime, JSON, Jinja2. I set up my templates directory. I set up environment to load my Jinja2 templates dir. I open up that sample CDP file and load it into a variable raw CDP. Set up date and time into this date time variable. Now down here, I'm just calling that Jinja2 template, which we'll look at in a second. And then this is what I'm passing into the Jinja2 template, if you think of it that way. Right, I'm saying Jinja2 template dot render, and then pass in the date and pass in that raw CDP, this file that we've loaded, at the index level. And then also here on this particular one, let's set the type to be routers. So what I'm going to do is, because I'd like different files to call into Blender, you see I have CDP routers here. All right, and then in my Blender to link the two together, my Jinja2, excuse me, what I have is, right, I'm going to load 3 files here together to put it all together for you. This is the sample, which I'm loading into this variable, which I'm then passing into the Jinja2 render as CDP at the index level, right? Index, index, right? You follow so far? So now in my Jinja2, I'm saying if the type is routers, right, for each neighbor in that CDP data capabilities, if it equals switch IGMP, go ahead and put the data in. And then I'm going to put that into the file CDP routers. Now what I hope to do is reuse this same code. Let's try to do it live now. So I'm going to copy all of this, and I'm going to call this, instead of routers here, right? Let's call this, what I'm going to do is make that switches. So switches, 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 switches. Here, this should be, well, I'll replace it and then change it. That should be with a capital. Switches. Okay, so now in my Jinja 2 template, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy this whole block here. Not this outer block, right? But just the, I'm actually just going to copy the inner block. So I'm going to take this whole thing here, and I'm just going to change a few little things. Let's see if type equals switches. And if the router capability, well, I need to refer to the JSON file for that. The capability of a switch is switch IGMP. Okay. So now let's go switch IGMP here and save it. And what I should get, and actually let me seed the file here. I have CDP routers. Let me call this CDP switches and just empty it out and save it. And we'll sit in this file, and hopefully the Docker will make this look magical. So we're going to build with a no cache, and we're going to bring it up. And in theory, hey, there you go. I have my workbench switch and my developer switch, along with my router core. All right, so that's the process. I'm going to do that for the various, right? What did I have left? A phone and a access point. So I'll do the same thing. I'm not going to record all that, but that's the process that I take right? Imagine in your head, I'm connecting to a device, parsing the show CDP neighbor detail. I get that JSON back. I pass it through Pythonically into my own Jinja template, put it into my own array that I consider Blender friendly. It also lets me put in my own labels. I don't want underscores and camel caps. I want it to look nice. So I'm going to use Jinja to do that. And now I'm sifting out and making different output files that in Blender, if you've watched some of my other videos, are going to become scripts that I link Pythonically into my Blender. And that's why I'm separating these out into different files. Become more evident as the videos go along. So let me finish up my JSON Java, my templating Jinja work for the last two file types. And then let's bring it into the world of Blender. All right, thanks very much. Stay tuned.